All right, Ruben. Ruben's hosting. Ruben, say Prost with Peter. Prost with Peter. He did it. What's up? Welcome to Prost with Peter. I'm Peter. Today, we're gonna be brewing a SMaSH beer. What is a SMaSH beer? Is that a weird new IPA that I haven't heard of? No. Well, it could be. I spoke too soon. SMaSH beer stands for single malt and single hop. So it's just a very, very simplistic recipe, and I think they can turn out really, really well. And in addition to that, I think they can teach you a ton about home brewing and how to brew beers that you really like. Not a cloud in the sky, sun's out. It's not too hot though. It's been too hot in LA and I hate it. I'm gonna cut off all my hair. We are gonna start with 8.5 gallons of reverse osmosis filtered water into the pot. Troop dam is in, kettle valve is off. I've got my water in. I'm going to turn on the heat, bring it up to about 160 degrees, our strike temp, then we will mash in. All right, so I'm looking to make a kind of classic pale ale profile, leaning into the bitterness a bit. So I've got a bit more gypsum than calcium chloride. So for this, I'm adding 4 grams of calcium chloride and 9 grams of gypsum. All right, so I just cut the heat. Now we're at strike temp. I'm gonna add my grains. Here might be a good time to tell you, the single malt in this beer is all Pilsner. I'm using American Admiral Pils organic malt, 12 pounds of it, hoping to get about 5.5% ABV beer, something really clean and simple. What way did we decide was out? Had this thing for like 60 brews and I don't know how to use it. This will be the outside. I got lost. All right, bags in, we're at strike temp. I'm gonna put in the grains. Might have gone a little overboard wrapping this up. All right, so like I said, a SMaSH beer means single malt and single hop. That's something that is a really good place to start if you're trying to get into recipe development. A lot of people are excited about homebrewing and get into something, and I did this too, where you look into how to brew a clone of something. Like you want to brew Pliny the Elder, and it's got 5 different hops at 8 different times and a pretty complex grain bill, and it doesn't turn out quite right, and then you have no idea where you really went wrong. Or maybe a beer isn't to your liking even if it turned out how it was supposed to, and you don't know what added to that you didn't really like. So a SMaSH beer is really good because you can pick a grain that you like or a grain that you've experienced before and a hop that you like, put those two together, and you can build on that. I've done a lot of SMaSH beers with 2-row. I think that's a great grain to stand on its own. It doesn't need a lot of other things alongside of it. Even though I'm brewing this beer with Kvik, I'm using Pilsner malt. That is also another good grain that can stand on its own. I know that people do Maris Otter or Golden Promise single malt beers, and those have turned out well. There's a lot of grains that you could use as a base malt in a single malt beer. Going off of that, if you want to pick a hop that you really enjoy, then you can start looking into pairings, and you can start thinking about when you want to add it to the beers. You know, you can experiment with this kind of stuff. I think that SMaSH beers can teach you more about beer and brewing than a complicated recipe can, especially if you're a newer brewer. Like I said, this is an all Pilsner beer, and the single hop that I have to go along with that is Cascade. I bought a pound of Cascade from Yakima Valley Hops. Love Yakima Valley Hops, shout out to them. Great customer service. And I've been meaning to do a few beers with Cascade. I like some classic C-hop stuff. I want to go for some cool classic IPAs, but I also just want to see what this Cascade can do. So I wanted to have it in a single hop beer and just see the evolutions of it. I'm going to add it for bittering, for flavor, and for aroma, and dry hop. It's all going to be Cascade, and I'm excited about it. It's pretty low alpha acid. I'm not shooting for something too terribly bitter, but I am going to be adding a lot of hops, so it should be hopefully fairly well balanced. Could bring out a lot of the really good flavors that have made Cascade an essential hop in the brewing industry. All right, it has been about 45 minutes. I was just going to do a 30-minute mash, but I got distracted playing with the dog. So 45-minute mash it is. Might have lost a little more temp, but also might have converted a few more sugars. Here it is. 144.9, a little low, but good conversion rate. So I'm not too worried about it. Let's get this grain out of here. Gain this grain. All right, grains are out. We've got our wort. Let's bring it up to a boil and add our hops. We've reached a boil. The hot break has dissipated. All that foam is gone. We're at a steady rolling boil. I'm gonna add my 60-minute hops, which is 1 ounce of Cascade, and start my 60-minute boil timer. Let's go. Cool, all right. You might have noticed we're working on a tribute to beers that I've drank, but 30 minutes into the boil, half an ounce of Cascade going in. So with 10 minutes left in the boil, I'm putting in Whirlfloc and yeast nutrient and my 10-minute addition, which is another ounce of Cascade hops. So I'm gonna start with the Cascade. And then I'm gonna put in my 2 grams of yeast nutrient and 1 tab of Whirlfloc. Make sure that gets mixed in. All right, with a little less than 10 minutes left in the boil, I'm also gonna add my immersion chiller to make sure that this is sanitized before we start cooling. All right, our 60-minute timer just went off, so that means I cut the heat, I'm gonna start the chiller, and then I'm gonna add 1 more ounce of Cascade as our flame out hops. We're gonna chill this down to about 90, 95 degrees because I'm gonna pitch Kveik yeast and ferment it warm. All right, 97.5 degrees, that's cool enough for me. I'm gonna pull out my immersion chiller, stir this up, let it settle for a bit, and then transfer to the fermentation vessel. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Stir it up. All right, I'm gonna give it a stir and we'll transfer once it's settled. Everything gets sanitized. I've got my sanitized transfer line, my settled wort, and my sanitized fermentation vessel, and I made sure that is closed. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and attach this and start transferring to the fermentation vessel. And there we go, delightful. All right, I'm gonna sanitize my hands and then shake this up for 60 seconds to aerate before I pitch my yeast. So I'm aerated and I'm at about 90 degrees. I'm going to pitch this half packet, it's about 5 grams, maybe 6, of dry Voss Kveik yeast. Just right on top, I'm not even gonna rehydrate it. I'm gonna let it rehydrate in the fermentation vessel. And then I'm gonna wrap it up at about 92 degrees and let it go for a few days until it looks like things have stopped. And then I think I'll let the heat die down and add the dry hop. All right, so that is brew day, start to finish. We're gonna let this sit for a few days. The Kveik yeast fermented warm should ferment very quickly. So hopefully we have a fully fermented beer in the next 6-7 days, and we can check on it, see how it's doing, finish it up, and transfer it to the keg. Hopefully we'll be drinking a really solid beer in 10 to 11 days. A little foamy on that one. All right, here we are with the SMaSH Cascade Pilsner. It was fermented with Kveik yeast, and it's looking pretty good. It's hazier than I expected it to be, but I think that's the yeast. I wasn't expecting it to be super clear like a Pilsner. It's got quite the haze to it. It's a nice color, good head, pretty foamy, a little bit over-carbonated, I think. I had a little trouble pouring it, but it's okay. I'm gonna unplug the CO2 and burp it a little bit and see if that carb will come down a tiny bit. For aroma, I get a nice, almost appley sweetness. Maybe more of a pear and peach. It's nice, it's fruitier than I expected, really. I was thinking I would get a bit more resinous, piney character from the Cascade, but this is coming out very, very fruity. It's a decent aroma, too, for a 1.5 ounce dry hop. Okay, let's give it a sip. There's 2 things that I think of right away. The first of which, if I brewed again, I would go higher on the IBUs. I was hoping for a bit more bitterness from 30, but I realized that's a little low. It's leaving me wanting a little more. But it's not bad. It's got kind of a hazy IPA vibe. This finished at 10-11, so pretty dry. Could have been, drier, but it's not super under attenuated like maybe a hazy IPA would be. The second thing I noticed, though, is there's a bit of a green apple-y flavor. It's not unwelcome, but it makes me think it's, and now I don't know how to say this word, acetaldehyde. I should look at it if I'm going to talk about it.
Acetaldehyde.
It's an off flavor, kind of like diacetyl, that the yeast will clean up, and I'm thinking that I could have let this sit in the fermenter a little longer and that would have cleaned itself up. Now, it's not unpleasant. It goes with the fruitiness of the beer. And I know that there's some beers that have it in it to give it that kind of crisp, fresh taste. Once you think about it, I kind of wish it wasn't there. But it's a learning opportunity. I've used the Voskvik yeast a few times before. Probably let it go a little longer. I was in a bit of a rush. I wanted to get this into the keg. Treat every brew as a learning experience. So I learned a few things from this. I hope you learned a few things from this. If you brew a SMaSH beer, you will be helping yourself learn about recipe development. I think that sometimes we get a little bit overcomplicated when we're brewing, and it's fun to go back to basics. Make sure to check out the rest of Prost with Peter, and let me know down in the comments what your favorite SMaSH beer pairing is. And for now, Prost.